Welcome back to Know Your Numbers. Today's final session is one where we have a brief discussion about a number of topics that arose in our discussions that took place during planning and production of this series. Welcome back, Carol. We're on the home stretch, and it's been fun for us to put our heads together to provide this type of resource for our small businesses.
So, I agree with you. When we compiled this presentation, there were so many things that we talked about that the small business owner is presented with. And so we had to make this section up to just things that we threw in there that we thought you needed to know as a small business owner to be able to run your company. And hopefully, it'll make a little sense and kind of tidy up our final part to what you really need to do to be successful.
There is quite a bit more because you can drill down and go into depth in pretty much any of these topics that we talked about today. Okay, so Carol, you've got some wonderful commentary and tips on bookkeeping. So why don't we get started with that?
Sure. Okay, evaluating your bookkeeper. So eventually you're going to get to the size where you need to hire a bookkeeper. So how do you know if you have a good bookkeeper or not? Unfortunately, there is no universal standard to determine if you have a good bookkeeper. There are tests out there, and I Googled to see if maybe we wanted to put them in the resource section, but I got to the point with how would you grade it and know that they were a good bookkeeper? You just don't have the technical terms to be able to do that. Most small business owners obtain their bookkeeper at the suggestion of a fellow small business owner. I mean, again, that's the standard, right? But how do you know if they're doing a good job with the original person? So we thought of a few areas and questions to ask the bookkeeper. So one, ask, what accounting education and experience do you have? Your ideal bookkeeper should have a minimum of an associate's degree in accounting. That is really, really helpful. Also, it would be great if they had 3 years of work history on top of that. And then two, do they take continuing education classes? How many a year do they take? Do they take, do they take any? It's really important because the software is constantly changing. So these continuing education classes are almost required. Three, are they certified in their accounting software? If they say yes, it shows that they have initiative, that they have some accounting experience. So to be certified, the software programs require you to have some accounting knowledge in order to be able to pass. So that kind of gives you a sense of knowledge base of where this bookkeeper is. Also, are they aware of local, state, and federal regulations for taxes? This is critical if you have to pay any sales and use tax, meals and room taxes, and or payroll taxes. So that is probably the number one thing that I see is that some bookkeepers will break down and say, I don't know how to do those. And if so, just move on, try to get another bookkeeper who does, because otherwise you're going to get penalties and interest and you're not going to be compliant and it just becomes a headache. So another one is, do they agree with the internal controls of the company? So we're going to talk more about this later, but if they don't agree to some of the parameters that you set, this is a red flag. Also, ask them if they can customize your accounting software reports. Maybe they say no, but they might be resourceful and they might be able to do this job if they do some research. So saying no upfront is not a barrier to hiring someone, but having them answer that they could find the place where they could get the information for this, that is somebody that you would be willing to work with. And lastly, when in doubt, talk to a tax preparer or call the Vermont SBDC for any type of recommendation. They're usually a really great resource. So, I'd say, and even then still, you may not get the best bookkeeper. You may get somebody who's banging off the wall. But again, there's no measurements for, to tell you who's a good bookkeeper and who is not. So next, Ross, why don't you tell us a little bit about documentation?
Thanks, Carol. One situation that the pandemic and the relief programs have brought to the forefront is that far too many business owners not only do not have their arms adequately around their financial information, but they cannot easily access documents. They often rely on others to locate them for them or simply do not know where their information is. You need to be able to put your hands on this critical information when you need it most. This includes tax returns, loan documents, business entity filing documents, checking account statements and information, and credit card statements. and more as well. Backup copies should be backed up on a cloud-based server such as Dropbox or one of the services offered by Google or Microsoft, and password protected. Also, having it on an external hard drive that travels to and from the workplace isn't a bad idea either. And having hard copies both on-site and at home is useful in case you were ever audited by the taxing authorities. And Carol will now talk about some internal controls.
All right, we're kind of jumping around topics here, but that's what this section is all about, right, Ross? So internal controls. And I go back to some of the bookkeepers. By definition, bookkeepers have access to very sensitive information. They must be trustworthy. It is never acceptable to break that trust, ever. Even if you trust someone, you need to protect yourself. And the way to do this is by having internal controls. So, if I may suggest, segregation of duties is an important component of internal control. Practically, what does this mean? For example, you could have one employee who collects the money and another who tallies and makes the deposit. Then the owner should look at it, sign into your bank account, view the deposit, and see, does it match the deposit slip and the sales tally? Another example is to have one employee input bills and another make the payment. Paying bills has gotten so much easier. I always recommend that the owner make all payments via their online banking platform. Because it gives you another level of control. And sometimes writing checks, what we used to have bookkeepers do, is really going away because of the ease of using the online banking system. But anyway, just come up with a segregation of duties that makes sense to your company. If you do give your bookkeeper signature authority, I would recommend that you establish maximum dollar amounts that they're allowed to write a check. And if possible, do not have a signature stamp for checks. Lastly, review every single financial statement that comes through. I always tell my clients to get their bank statements in the mail. Take 10 minutes to look at them, review them. It won't, do that on your Monday morning task list. Another item that I say to individual owners is to open all mail. You would be amazed what notices come through the mail. I know it's snail mail. I know it's old fashioned, but I encourage you to do that. You'd be surprised. Late notices, customer complaints, all sorts of things come through mail. And so take a look at that. If you only are virtual, then maybe you should have a bookkeeping email specific for the company. You could call it accounting@yourcompanyname.com. This way, if necessary, you can also review the emails that come through to make sure that everything's going smoothly as it is, to identify issues as they come up, and just to be aware. Awareness is the number one key on this. And lastly, on our next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about other controls. So you may not know this, but your accounting software may have user levels that can limit users' access to what they can view. I encourage you to use it. Also, there are a lot of apps out there that allow only you to have a password to your financial institutions while allowing employees access to the financial institutions themselves, but you're not sharing the password with them. One example of this is LastPass. I just chose that one because that one comes up a lot, but there are other password protection programs out there. Lastly, always ask questions as to why something doesn't look quite right. Not following up on issues can really hurt you in the long run. There are more things that you can do. We have listed just a few, and it's not comprehensive, but I can't state this enough, that if you need to do at least some of these items I have covered, you will never regret it. Ross, what other suggestions do you have about bookkeepers?
Well, we're looking at, one thing I wanted to discuss is essentially the return on investment, not just on the bookkeepers, but everything that we're going to do and everything that we're asking you to do. What we're suggesting you do throughout the entire presentation here is to invest your time, energy, and money, all of which are frequently in short supply or one time or another, to make changes that will ultimately put you and your business in a better position. We understand that it's difficult to do. The financial gains, however, can be significant, but how important would it be to sleep better at night, knowing you have more control over your business, that you can get and make more sound and savvy decisions based on facts rather than gut feelings or guesswork. We believe that you'll see a return far beyond any money that you need to spend to put these procedures and processes into place. So that's the end of what we have to offer you in our in our presentations here. So let's take a look. We've got some resources that we wanted to make you aware of. So first and foremost, I'll simply provide a mention for the Small Business Administration and America's SBDC. Those are our two support organizations in Washington, D.C. They provide funding and support from there. The Vermont Small Business Development Center, my organization who sponsors this particular series of financial information. We have advisors that are available throughout the state. We work on a regional basis to provide assistance, resources, and advice to help you improve your business. But we're not the only one out there. We've got a couple of others that are locally that could be available to you as well. The Center for Women in Business Enterprise is an organization that does a superb job of providing assistance, guidance, and they have superb training programs. In addition to that, the Vermont SCORE, the Service Corps of Retired Executives, is an organization that has volunteers that will sit down and work with you in the same business, the same manner as we do at the VTSBDC. Finally, there's a couple of external resources that we'd recommend that can provide some assistance and ideas on an accounting and financial basis. Accountingcoach.com is an online resource that some of us here at the SBDC use. It's a great resource, provides all kinds of excellent information and teaching. And along with that, Intuit, the company that owns QuickBooks, provides training classes on how to use their bookkeeping software as well. That's it. That's a wrap. And Carol, I just wanted to extend thanks to you for taking the time and the energy and effort that it took to assist us with this project. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap it up and call it a day?
Sure. So knowledge is power. Okay, Ross. And I encourage every small business owner to, go through this program, because us at my company and at Vermont SBDC, we want you to reach the highest level of success possible to manage your company. And so it's been a pleasure being here. I think Vermont SBDC is an excellent resource for training, and I encourage everybody to reach out to one of them to help you out.
Well, great. And thank you again. We certainly appreciate everything you've done here. And I would certainly be remiss if I did not give a huge shout out to our skilled, talented technical assistant, Kate Patterson, who has worked with us very patiently as we've worked through all the changes, ideas, thoughts, and everything else that's involved with putting on a production like this. So Kate, thank you so much for all you've done. And it wouldn't have been possible without you. So that's it. We hope you can take this, you've taken this information and used it and put it to your best advantages, and hope that you'll use this all to better know your numbers.